So it's an idea of working with the body as a whole in a supportive way. And it's something that, yeah, it's not one and done. It's a constant practice. It's being disciplined and dedicated and allowing you to put yourself first. Because if you don't, no one else can be cared for. If you're not caring for yourself as the woman in the household, like that's it. Like the whole household is gonna fail. And so if you think, self-care is selfish, you're setting yourself up in this negative belief system still, right? And you're setting yourself up for all of these issues because when we don't feel our feelings and our sensations, we create imbalance in the body.
Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey y'all, welcome back to Hopeful and Wholesome. Today I have on the show Amy Stein, and Amy's mission is to educate and empower those who are struggling with their health on how to reconnect to their body's innate intelligence using Mother Nature as a guide. And she really finds that when we awaken to our inner light and wisdom, that we can sync the body and the mind and the spirit. And that's exactly what we're talking about today, how we can connect or reconnect the mind, the body, and the spirit, and really connect to Mother Nature and how that affects our whole body healing. She has really got an incredible story of her own and how she has healed herself from a lot of medical issues and struggles with her physical, mental, emotional health, and how really coming back into that whole mind, body, spirit connection and Mother Nature has helped her heal, and how this wisdom that our bodies hold and Mother Nature holds really holds the keys to us keeping ourselves out of dis-ease and keeping us stuck in life. Such a good, insightful conversation. Let's jump in. All right, y'all, let's jump in. I'm here with Amy, and I'm so excited to chat with you today, Amy. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Hope. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. And I love a good conversation that is just going to kind of stem from people's experience and their story. Like, I think those are some of the best conversations. And so I would love to kind of start there and have you just kind of share what you do, who you are, kind of your story, because I think your story is a good kind of platform for us to bring in this conversation.
Sure. So I'm located in New York. I'm an herbalist, I'm an energy medicine educator, and I'm a trauma-informed breathwork coach. So basically, I use traditional healing energies that are 5,000 years old to assist people on their own healing journey to bring their body back into balance. And so it was something that I kind of happened upon because Western medicine failed me. So from a young age, it failed me. And I was brought up in the same society as everybody else, right? That you go to the doctor when there's something wrong and they fix you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned at a very young age that actually is not true. But because I didn't know another way, I just kept going the same route, right? Like I kept hitting my head against the wall thinking there would be a different result.
Mm-hmm.
And it culminated when I was working at a big research facility here in New York. I was working with chronic pain patients who were, geriatric, so like 65, 70, 75. I began to resemble them at 25, 26, 27. And I thought there's something going on here. Like this is not supposed to happen to me at this age. And my body had been giving me messages for a long time, ever since I can remember, from age 5. And I didn't know what to do with them. And again, when I would express them to doctors and teachers, I was told I was being too sensitive. I was, exaggerating. It couldn't be real. It couldn't be that bad. But it was very debilitating as a young kid. And it was really hard to hear that from people that were supposed to be, helping me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it created this pattern of not being seen, heard, or believed that was just intensified as I became an adult. And I still was having these messages from my body. In our society, we're not taught to pay attention to them, right?
Yep.
We're not taught to understand what it means. We're just taught to go get the pill, have the surgery, and everything will be fine. Come back when it gets worse. And it was really frustrating for me to see my patients go through that. And I was trying to advocate for them, but it was worse when I was going through it and there was no one to advocate for me. And I felt really lost in the system, even though I was going to the doctors I had been working with for years. I felt like, how come you're not listening to me when you
Mm-hmm.
know me? I'm not a nameless person. I'm not a, you know who I am. And it's the message I kept getting on this merry-go-round of doctors. Again, I live in New York. So like we have a lot of doctors. You throw a rock, you hit a doctor, right? Like there's abundance of them. And so I went to all the big specialists. I went to Manhattan. I saw all of the important people. And the message I kept hearing was basically, we don't know what's wrong with you, but our solution is this pill.
Mm.
Our solution is this surgery, right? But it was in our society, it's all piecemeal. So the body is broken up into parts. The
Yep.
body's not looked at it as a whole.
Right.
And so none of these doctors were talking to each other. And I kept saying, like, can you call the endocrinologist? Can you speak to my neurologist? Can you speak to my rheumatologist? Can you speak to my GI doctor? And the message was, no, we don't do that. Right. Like
Mm-hmm.
this idea of, oh, that's their specialty.
Right.
Right. I don't know. I don't understand that. And I thought this is wrong. This is so wrong. Like there has to be a better way. And so the merry-go-round lasted for about 3 years of
Mm.
me following the different protocols, being, the compliant patient and still getting sicker to the point where the doctors didn't want to see me because even though I was compliant, I was questioning why I was getting sicker and they
Mm-hmm.
didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it felt very disempowering. It felt very frustrating and it was really scary and I didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. So what was your kind of aha moment where you're like, this is how I'm gonna figure things out for myself?
So there were a few moments that led me to that moment. There wasn't just one. Like I didn't wasn't sitting on a park bench and had like this epiphany, right? It was kind of like it was the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I had been to three really well-renowned doctors in different fields, and they all kind of said to me, they all had different approaches, and they all echoed that, we don't really know what to do with you. You have all these symptoms, you don't fit into the boxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has to fit into a box. They know how to treat you. And I didn't. I had so many different symptoms. And so I was in this doctor's office, a very well-renowned hematologist, and he said to me, let's just try chemotherapy. And I said, I don't have cancer. And he
I'm
said, that's
sorry,
fine.
what?
Yeah, that's fine. We'll
Oh
just
my
kill your
gosh.
immune system and hope it grows back.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, I'm desperate, but I'm not that desperate. Like, if I'm going
Right.
to die, I'm going to die on my own terms, not because you're poisoning me with
No
chemotherapy.
kidding. Holy
Yeah.
cow.
So then that was like kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, where I
Yeah.
said, yeah, like my mom was taking me all these appointments because I couldn't drive myself. I couldn't leave
Mm-hmm.
the house. My
Mm-hmm.
husband couldn't take off work because he was the only one working. And we needed we needed the paycheck
Sure.
to pay for all these
Sure.
doctors that were out of network.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I said, I'm not doing this anymore. And I
Mm-hmm.
sat down my family, my parents, and my husband, and I said, listen, I did it your way and it's not working. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know what the answer is, but this is not the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
And again, in our society, like we're taught to only trust things we can see, right?
Right. Right.
So if you can't see it, it's not real, but your
Mm-hmm.
intuition is real. But because we don't have that connection to Mother Earth anymore, we don't have that connection to ourselves anymore,
Mm-hmm.
we don't trust things we can't see. But I had that voice saying, like, this is wrong. Don't do this. This
Mm-hmm.
doctor can't help you, right? Like you go along with your briefcase of
Yep.
medical records, praying that this doctor will figure it out, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
desperate for diagnoses. But you're just on this manic merry-go-round of the
Yep.
same thing all of the time. And so I thought, I'm not going to let these doctors guinea pig anymore because they're not doing it. And I'm the one that's experiencing what's happening in my body.
Yeah.
So, if anything, I'll guinea pig myself and I'll see what works.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I had already cleaned like up my diet extensively. I was on an autoimmune protocol diet, which they thought was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I had gotten rid of like all the toxins in my household that I could control, right? Like
Right.
we were filtering our water, we were filtering our air. I got rid of all of the dirty cleaning products, all of the dirty beauty products, everything. And if I could make it cheaply, I just made it myself because I knew
Yeah.
what was in it, right? But
Yeah.
there was a lot of things that we can't see that were affecting me. And I
Mm-hmm.
later realized in my research it was because I'm a highly sensitive person. So it's a trait that you're born with, but you're like the canary in the coal mine in that you're the first wave of the group of people that will have all of these physical symptoms, mental, emotional symptoms, because your body's designed that way.
Mm-hmm.
And back in ancient times, like you were revered. You were the shaman. You were the medicine woman of the tribe. Like you warned people when weather was coming, if
Yeah.
the food was safe to eat,
Yeah.
if the animals were going to attack, like you could sense the weather fluctuations, all of that, right? So you were revered. But in our society, technology is revered, not Mother Nature.
Hmm.
And so I was looked as weird and different as a kid. And as an adult, like, oh, that's so weird that you're going to do that. I'm like, I don't really care what you think because I feel better.
Yeah.
But these things that we can't see, like molds and parasites and,
Right.
EMF and all,
Hmm.
all these other radioactive frequencies that there's science and research that shows they're harmful, but it's not
Right.
talked about in modern
Right.
medicine.
Right.
It's not talked about unless you live in a third world country.
Hmm.
And so it was really frustrating to me, along with, trauma not being mentioned, childhood trauma, adult trauma, we all experience it, whether it's big T or little t trauma. It affects the body, the whole system as a whole. None of this was talked about, including the body as a whole. So I
Hmm.
began to do like extensive research, and the first stop was plant medicine.
Mm.
And I was really fascinated by what I was finding out in that I had always gardened ever since I was a kid, and that all these plants that were already growing on my property, a lot of them weeds, had all these medicinal properties and components for healing. I was like, that's crazy. Why is nobody talking about this? Right?
Hmm.
Like, why is everyone killing their dandelions
Right.
rather than using them for food and medicine?
Hmm.
Why is everybody killing the clover? Well, all of these things, the cleavers, all these things that are growing now in springtime are really supportive to the body and getting rid of like that stagnation, that heavy energy. So I began studying Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine and really understanding these traditional practices that go back thousands of years and are
Hmm.
still around today
Right.
because they were,
Right.
right?
Well, I find it interesting. A few things I wanted to unpack there. I find it interesting because I feel the same way about, people don't see it, they don't believe it, right? I find it interesting because there's so many aspects of Western medicine where it's like I think of like going to get an x-ray. Like I remember my son had to have a CT scan one time when he had this really severe thing going on. And I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that you're going to put this protective thing on him and we're going to stay away from the x-ray machine because we can't see the x-ray, but we know that it's bad. But then when we talk about all these other things, we can't. I find it so funny how selective that we are in, conventional medicine on things that make sense and don't make sense. I just find that fascinating.
Well, it's all about money, right? So like
Yes.
this whole modern day medicine society is only 200 years old, if that. John
Hmm.
D.
Right.
Rockefeller created it, right?
Right.
Like because he can make money off of it and he standardized the system. So he kicked out all the homeopaths, all the naturopaths, all of the chiropractors, said they were quacks and frauds, and standardized all the medical schools in the United States and standardized care and made it a sick care system that, it was
Hmm.
based upon how we can make money. He made it into a business rather than actually helping people. That's
Right.
not to say that people go to medical school because they want to be rich, right? Like
Right.
they want to help people,
Right.
but the
Right.
system is broken and what they learn is actually not helpful. It's actually harmful. And so a lot of the times I explain to people like one, the learning process, the healing process is not easy by
Hmm.
any means, right?
Hmm.
It's extremely hard. It's not linear. It's not A to B to
Right.
C. Like it looks like a drawing that's done by a toddler. Like there are all these scribbles, it's all different colors. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And it's a process of unlearning,
Yeah.
unlearning the belief systems and the programs that we have, have been crafted for us before age 7. It's not something that you voluntarily picked up. Like Bruce Lipton speaks about this in his book, Biology of Belief, in that
Hmm.
all of these systems that we are a part of are not systems we actually chose for
Right.
ourselves, right? But we
Right.
accept them as true. We accept them as right because we live in a dualistic society. If everything is black and white, it's right or wrong, there's no gray, there's no
Right.
middle ground, right? So all the things that I was doing was crazy talk. People were like,
Hmm.
this is insane. You're going to kill yourself. I'm like, no, no, no. Think I'm onto something because I actually am feeling
Feeling
better,
better. Right.
right?
Hmm.
Because I was
Hmm.
working with my body rather than against it.
Right. Right. Well, and I think that it's, I have a mentor of mine that I've worked with kind of off and on over the past years. She talks about she's big into human design. I'm into human design. That's kind of where I started training with her. But she talks about how like you have this like there's like stages of kind of your spiritual awakening, right? And you have the moment where you're like you realize that everything up to this point has been taught to you, Like none of it is ours. And then it's like this unweaving and untangling, trying to figure out what's ours and what's somebody else's. And she was saying, like, you know, at this moment she had in her life, she was like, I was really angry and bitter about it for a long time. Like I was just an angry person, realizing that all of this stuff are just beliefs passed on. Like I don't even know what's mine anymore. But I feel like it's relevant to what you're talking about, because it's with, you know, every aspect of life. But we think about, like you just said, the conventional, the Western medical model has only been around for a couple hundred years. But it's all we know. Everyone who's alive right now, it's all we know, because nobody was alive before it was, you know, created. And that's just it. Like, it's just, this is how, when we were, you know, from the time we were born, you know, most of us, not all of us, but most of us, at least in my generation, were born in a hospital. I know there's more and more babies born at home, but anyway, we're born in a hospital. We see the doctors when you're sick. Like, it's just, right? It's like, this is what we do. This is the only thing we know. And it is the unlearning piece um, is so complicated. I think there's just, because, well, here's the other thing. I had a guest on my show a few weeks ago, and she was talking about, she works with traditional Chinese medicine too, and she was saying, like, in traditional Chinese medicine, like, they only use a protocol after it's been tested for it's like 200 years or something. Like, so it's like, so I'm like, okay, so that just blows our whole FDA thing out of the water. Like, let's try it on a few people and see what works. It's like, no. And people think that traditional Chinese medicine is, you know, woo woo or whatever, but it's like, that's mind blowing to me, because most people don't know that because they haven't taken the time to learn it, because they think anything besides what's outside of that box is quackery, like you were saying.
It's wrong, right? Yeah, it's weird. It's
Mm-hmm.
wrong. We don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I just think it's such a complex, um, like retraining and rewiring and relearning for people. And, you know, I think people like me and you were able to kind of pull some like practicality forward and make it a little bit more pragmatic for people. But there's still, you know, there's still the resistance, because again, it's all we've ever been known. So when you were working to, you know, heal your body, and you were kind of, you know, playing trial and error and guinea pig on yourself, what and you implemented all these different types of protocol, like Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine, all that. So what had you started doing with your own body, where you're like, hey, like, beside, you know, you cleaned out all your things and stuff, you talked about that, but what was kind of when you started realizing, okay, what I'm doing right now, I am going with my intuition here and this innate wisdom that I have. What was it that you realized, okay, this is working, like this all of this right here is actually working to heal my body?
So I felt like less disconnected to my body, in that, rather than shaming and judging the symptoms that were coming up. And again, I'm human, like, not to say that I don't fall back on that
Sure.
occasionally, right? Because again, like, you're a human being, so give
Yeah.
yourself some grace. But I began to understand and make correlations, but like, oh, when I eat this, I get really bad swelling.
Mhm.
Or when I do this activity, it actually isn't beneficial for me, right? Because there's so
Mhm.
many, so like, this is what I always say to people, like, there is no one thing that's going to help.
Yeah.
Like, I did 1,000 different things, and I could sit here and tell you all of them. I probably can't, because I did 1,000 different things, right? But what worked for me isn't going to necessarily work for you, because we're
Right.
all unique in our life
Yep.
experience and our needs.
Yep.
And so the best thing that I did was be open to something
Mhm.
different.
Mhm.
Like, that literally
Yep.
is the best advice I can give to somebody.
Yep.
Be curious, be open to something different, question what you've been told. Does this
Mhm.
really serve you? Is this really
Mhm.
working for me? Is this really
Right.
benefiting me? Right? Like,
Right.
you going to the doctor, getting a prescription, taking the pills, like, does it actually help me? Your
Right.
body does not recognize pharmaceuticals, because it's chemicals and it's,
Mhm.
you know, created in a lab. It's not
Mhm.
real. And so your body will recognize plants. Your body
Mhm.
will recognize energy medicine, like homeopathics, because
Mhm.
it has an energetic frequency that works with your body, but it also is not created from garbage. Like, it
Mhm.
actually has, it's alive. Like, it has alive. And I say this all the time, like, eat real food. And people are like, what does that mean? I'm like, eat food that is alive. That
Yeah.
does not come from a box or a
Right.
bag. Like, I
Right.
don't, like, eat real food. Don't
Yeah.
eat things, don't go to a drive-through. Listen, like,
Right.
people are busy. I get that. But there is a way, like, I cook maybe 3 times a week. I batch cook, right?
Mhm.
And I
Right.
freeze stuff. or
Mm-hmm.
I can it. I have a pressure canner. And so like if I don't feel good, because again, I never say I'm fully healed. It is a journey. As long as I'm in
Sure.
this physical body,
Mm-hmm.
things are going to be coming up. It's part of the unlearning. It's part of my healing journey. And so I try to make my life easy. Like I don't make complicated meals.
Yeah.
I roast a bunch of vegetables
Yeah.
and I roast like a protein, right?
Yeah.
Pasture-raised chicken or pasture-raised
Right.
lamb or whatever my friend has that she's raised because
Mm-hmm.
I don't buy my meat from the grocery store
Mm-hmm.
because I know how bad it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I'm not eating the fake meat. I'm not
Right.
eating, I'm not going to name names, but I'm not eating that because
Right.
it's all chemicals.
Right.
And so I've learned by listening to my body and by learning how to read labels, like what is actually good for me, because a lot of greenwashing happens, right? Like we're seeing it now with food. You know, the food is medicine agenda, but they're pushing all garbage. They're not
Mm-hmm.
actually pushing real food. Like they want you to
Mm-hmm.
eat less meat, but the conventional meat is the problem. It's how
Right.
it's raised, right? And
Right.
how it's treated and how it's slaughtered. But if
Right.
you know a farmer, like I'm lucky enough to have friends who are farmers and they raise their own meat so I can get it from them, right? Like that's a luxury. I
Yeah.
understand that. That's a
Yeah. Yeah.
privilege,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that's where I spend my money.
Right.
I choose to spend my money in places I want to support people.
Right.
And so it's a process also of awareness of like,
Mm-hmm.
how am I interacting in the world? How am I choosing to, who am I choosing to spend time with? How am I choosing, right? It's like a lot of times in the ebook we've included in the bottom, it's like 5 quick tips to connect back to your body, right? One of them is quieting the noise.
Mm-hmm.
That's the internal monkey chatter of the monkey mind, but it's also the external. Like, I don't watch the news.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, oh, how do you know what's going on? If I need to know something, I'll know, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to
Yeah.
watch doom and gloom. I don't need to be more depressed. I don't need to see violence. Your system is very sensitive, as everyone's is, but as a highly sensitive person, I have to be really mindful of what
Mm-hmm.
I'm ingesting. That's visually, that's also ingesting food wise, right? Like it's a whole thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
I treat my body in a way that is supportive so that when I am 50, I'm going to feel like I'm 30,
Right.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
rather than most people when they're 50, like they're already on 5 medications,
Mm-hmm.
right? So people will say, oh, we live longer. And people back then didn't live as long, right? But we don't live longer well,
Right. Right. Right.
right?
That's
And
the
we don't live
piece.
longer healthy or
Mm-hmm.
well or happy.
Mm-hmm.
We might live longer, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not in what you would define as well.
Right. Right.
So it comes back to awareness, right?
I
And
think so. Yep. No, I think so. And I love that you picked that piece out because that's always the biggest piece for me. And I was just talking about this in an interview I did yesterday, the awareness piece, because I think well, you said it at the beginning that we're not taught to listen to our body. Like we're not taught to listen to cues and signals. And I was actually doing a post about this earlier, and it was kind of triggered from an interaction I had with someone who was, interested in working with me. And it's amazing to me that we can go so long with our body giving us signals and signs that go just unattended, right? We either dismiss them, we ignore them, we're like, oh, it's not a big deal. And I think also people don't understand like how adaptable our body is and how resilient the human body is. The human body is an amazing thing and our bodies adapt. And so these things start to pop up and then our bodies adapt to that being the new normal. But that doesn't mean that all of this like chaos going on under the surface isn't still happening. And so then, 4, 5, 6, 7, however many years later, 12 million things start popping up on the surface because you've ignored these signs that started 10 years ago. I think people don't understand, like, well, I don't, I feel fine. And I've been in the same boat. I've been in the same boat where I dismissed things. And then I did labs on myself. I'm like, holy crap, my adrenals are like barely functioning right now. So I've been there, but I don't know. And I would love to get your take on this. What does it take? What is it going to take to make that shift where we are teaching our kids and women? I always think about women and how so many women don't understand how their bodies work and their hormones work. Like, what does it take for us to really be able to, like, because you can't really teach awareness, but I guess that's what it's going to take is us teaching, like, how do we become more aware and stop this cycle where we're basically just moving from such a disempowered place because we wait for everything to break down and then we go to the doctor like, okay, fix me, give me the pill to fix me. I was like, no, your body was sending signals 10 years ago. Like, so I'd just love to get your take on that and like what is the shift that needs to happen to really move the needle there on the awareness piece?
Well, I think, like you said, a lot of it is education. That's why I'm doing these interviews, right? Like your body's designed to heal. And when you know better, you do better, right? But because
Mm-hmm.
none of this is taught in school, right? The paradigm is taught. You get sick, you go to the doctor, they fix
Mm-hmm.
you. And so it's this sick care system
Yeah.
that is broken. And so it needs to be changed from the inside. So if
Mm-hmm.
more people understand how the body works, how the body's designed to heal, but the body is also designed to keep you safe.
Right.
So if you make too big of changes, the body thinks you're dying. Change is
Exactly.
scary to the body. And the body's like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, we're going to die. We can't do that. What are you trying to do to us? Right. So you have to really understand how the body works in that it is a whole system that plays off each other. And that,
Mm-hmm.
people will come to me and be like, oh, I just got cancer. I'm like, you didn't just get cancer because your
Right.
body kills cancer cells every single day. But you have not, again, paid attention to the signs your body's been giving you. So now it feels like you just got cancer because the lab work is finally showing it.
And you were
But the
diagnosed.
body
Yeah.
will give, yeah, the body will give
Mm-hmm.
indications. My body gave me indications there's something wrong my whole childhood, but my labs are always normal, right? Labs are not the end all be all because your
Yep.
body is really smart and
Yep.
it will give you messages that labs can't pick up yet because it's not sensitive enough, but your body is. And so what I practice and what I also educate on is connecting more to Mother Nature because the innate wisdom that exists within her also exists within us.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can connect more to the way that she interacts, right? Like she's very resilient. We've polluted and poisoned her, and she's still going, and she will survive all of us. Like, if you
Mm-hmm.
don't think that's true, then you are very naive because she has been here before humans for a lot of time. And so, this also idea that in our society, we're taught not to feel our feelings and not to feel our sensations, right? Because you can't see them, they're not real,
Mm-hmm.
they're not valid, they're not logical. But I question how logical are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
Because you could say it's like that bad neighborhood, right? Like it's that repetitive, negative thought process. 80%, 85% of your thoughts are negative and repetitive. And so that's what you believe,
Right.
but they're not true,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's part of that awareness of, and again, we're all human. So you're not going to live this way 100% of the time. Again, it's a practice, right? But implementing this in small ways, getting outside, being aware of what exists around you, right? Taking that time to take the 3 deep breaths, to breathe in. Right now, there's some pollen, but also you can smell spring, right? The
Mm-hmm.
flowers are blooming, the trees are blooming, and you can experience with all of your senses what is there. You can touch the grass, you could with your bare feet, or you can, to go on a hike. I take the dog, I have a park nearby, I take her a few times a week. That's where I feel best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even if you live in this city, Central Park, people forage in Central Park. I personally wouldn't, but you could, right? And so there's all these ways that we think that we're so advanced now. We revere technology as the end all be all, but
Yeah.
actually, Mother Nature is that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you can find ways to connect back to her and her wisdom, right? Like, so maybe you don't want to take a walk, but you'll go to the beach and you'll sit there and you'll watch the seagulls and you'll listen to the waves and you'll breathe the salt air, right? Whatever that means for you, sitting outside reading a book, but like mindfully, not
Mm-hmm.
just, I have to get this done, right? Because we're consumed with to-do lists and all the things, but that to-do list will never end.
Mm-hmm.
It will always keep going. There will always be something on it.
Right.
So it's an idea of working with the body as a whole in a supportive way. And it's something that, yeah, it's not one and done. It's a
Right.
constant practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's being disciplined and dedicated and allowing you to put yourself first, because if you
Mm-hmm.
don't, no one else can be cared for. If you're
Right.
not caring for yourself as the woman in the household, like that's it. Like the whole household is gonna fail. And so if you think, self-care is selfish, you're setting yourself up in this negative belief system still, right? And you're setting yourself up for all of these issues because when we don't feel our feelings and our sensations, we create imbalance in the body. So everything is energy, right? So energy medicine talks about this. It's now modern day quantum physics or, catching up to it in quantum biology. But again, 5,000 years, I'm just going to put that out there. It was all talked about then. And so now modern day science is catching up to the validity and validity of it.
Right.
But everything is energy. Everything in the physical world, whether you can see it or cannot see it, is energy. And so when you can understand that, and no, you can't create it or destroy it, but you can change it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this idea of how can I create a more nurturing environment? right? Like, what can I do to create more of a nurturing environment for my body, for my family, for my own well-being?
Mm-hmm.
Because when we do not, and we are triggered, and again, the body's process to heal, but we don't allow it to go through the healing journey when we're triggered and activated by something, we stuff it down, right?
Right.
We numb out,
Right.
we dissociate, we go, maybe we're an addict, we go to social media, we drink, whatever, like have that wine, whatever it is, right, to get you through it. And you think that that's your coping mechanism, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not a positive coping mechanism because it's working against the body. And so all of these unfelt emotions, all these unfelt sensations create block energies in the body, which then lead to disease, pain, chronic illness, you name it. And so when we think like this just happened overnight, this condition, no, it's you've been set up for it for
Mm-hmm.
your whole life. Maybe you
Yep.
inherited it, right? Like
Right.
energy can be passed down. So I do a lot of energy healing work daily. Before I do interviews, I'm sure you do too. Like you have a ritual, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I spray my bye bye bad juju spray that I've created. Like I clear myself. I
Mm-hmm.
make sure that everything is set up. The dog has a treat, right? So like she doesn't bark. And so there's a whole ritual around it because that's what makes me feel safe.
Right.
And so when you understand that the body's designed for safety, you can begin then to say like, when I do this thing, I don't feel safe, and identify how you feel it in your body. So I've also included a healing journal below for people because a lot of people will just say like, "Oh, I feel overwhelmed, I feel anxious." But there
Right.
could be eight different feelings underneath that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really getting in touch with back in the body as a whole. Like the mind is just part of the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I love that. And I think you picked on a lot of things there. One of them being, and I think this is why people struggle with kind of like um separating themselves from the conventional medical model is because the healing path isn't linear. Like you were saying earlier, it's like, a 2-year-old scribbled on a piece of paper. And that's the thing. And I have so many clients who've come to me and they've worked with, they've gone the conventional medical route, but then they've also worked with other alternative methods. But the one thing hasn't worked. And so they think, well, it's not going to work. And I think that's the other issue is people that lose faith in kind of these, I say alternative methods, and I really hate that word because it really is an alternative method, right? It's how
No,
people
but you're
heal
so
themselves.
right.
Yeah, right. This is how people heal themselves for thousands of years. But anyway, it's besides the point. But people lose faith in, well, this doesn't work either. But like they haven't given themselves the time. And the other thing that you were just talking about, like how everything is energy. I think the other thing is people want, because I had this conversation with people, they want, tell me the supplement to take, tell me this one thing, tell me the one diet thing, where it's like everything you were just talking about, the emotions, feeling them, identifying them, letting them like energy, all of that, like that's where it all starts. Like, yes, of course, supplementation and diet has its place and it's going to help with the process. But it's always, and I am a firm believer, and you might agree or you might disagree. I'm a firm believer that everything physically that shows up on the body has some emotional or spiritual root cause, right? And
Absolutely.
so we want to skip over those pieces because it's not like, first of all, it's not the quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, like we're forcing ourselves to like feel things, which like you're talking about, it doesn't feel safe to the body. But it's like all these things that we've just kind of pushed aside or labeled as not as important, or it's not the sexy thing to do to fix the thing. Like these are the things we should be doing. But again, we'd rather label them as, whatever. It's alternative, right? It's alternative methods. When it's like, no, like this is actually what everybody, like thousands of generations have done this before us. So it's, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as long as humans have roamed the earth, they've eaten plants and they've used
Yeah.
plants as medicine,
As
right? And like,
medicine, right.
right. When all emotions are is energy and motion. It's just your body being like, hey, pay attention here because I want to pass this and heal this. And it's only
Mhm.
going to take 90 seconds, but you have to stop and feel it for 90 seconds, right? And people are like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's awful. But it's only 90 seconds. But we've been conditioned that it's going to be
Yes.
forever and it's going to be like
Yes.
overwhelming and so uncomfortable and so painful. So we're not going to go there. So we're going to
Yeah.
push it down more,
Yeah.
which is actually creating the problem. But again, this is not taught, right? Until
Mm-hmm.
you're in the position you and I are in, and you have to learn it on your own. And
Mm-hmm.
then you want to help other people because you're like, hey, there is another way, right?
Right.
And there is no one quick fix. Like there is no magic pill, there's no magic protocol because everyone is different.
Yep.
And but you have the tools available to you to guide yourself on the journey, right? So, like, I'm a firm believer that if you can connect back to your intuition and back into your body will let you know. And I always tell people this, like, if you're listening to your intuition, it does not shame you. It does not
Yeah.
feel bad. It does not give
Yeah.
you anxiety. It is helpful. It's your higher self, your higher wisdom, your higher power speaking to you to guide you in a loving way. If if you're feeling shameful and guilty and like bad about it, that's your mind, that's your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts, that's your
Mm-hmm.
programming
Yep.
trying
Yep.
to influence you because
It's
it
the
thinks it's
ego
going to keep
mind.
you safe. Yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
that reptilian brain. It's like
Yep.
survival, survival, survival. Don't do anything different. We have to think the same thoughts
Right.
because otherwise we'll die. Right. And
Yeah.
it's like this manic energy.
Yep.
And so, again, when we can live in curiosity, when we can practice awareness, when we can question ourselves and what we've been taught, it gets a little easier because you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Right.
Right. So I used the feeling journal and identified what was underneath my anxiety. It was some doubt. Right. And oh, okay. And like, I prompted what the doubt, where it felt in my body. Right. And what was my body trying to tell me? So yeah, you're not going to know overnight. Like you're not going to do it once. Oh, Amy, I did the journal, it didn't work. Well, how many times did you do it? I did it once. Right. It's not going to work. It's a practice, right? Of getting back in touch because you've been
Right.
out of touch your whole life
Right.
with this intelligence. So
Mm-hmm.
it, for me, it's 12 years. Like it's still happening, right? Like it's still happening.
Yeah.
And it's a conscious choice that I make every day to be really rigid in how I live my life. Like people think I live my life really rigidly. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay. That's
Mm-hmm.
my choice, right?
Right.
I'm not inflicting on anybody else. You get to choose what's best for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
But I have found that this is what's best for me. And when I don't live this way, I pay the price.
Right. Right.
And I go into a flare, or I have a migraine for a week, or I
Mm-hmm.
have bad vertigo, or I have GI symptoms. Like, so I've learned that it's actually better for me to be really rigid.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with it. Like
Yeah.
I'm okay with
And
it. So
it works for
why does
you.
anybody else care, right? Like
Right.
I'm okay
Right.
with it.
Right.
I'm not asking
Right.
anyone else to do it.
Right.
So it's this idea of when we can stop being impacted by what other people think is really important
Mm-hmm.
too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you can have the courage to understand, like, my body's trying to help me, and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
listen to that rather than what someone else says.
Right. Right.
Know that that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
When there's nothing wrong with that,
Mm-hmm.
to do something differently. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
You're doing what's best for you, and that's all that you can do.
Right.
And no one can tell you what that is but you.
Well, and I think that's the other piece too, is people either, like you're saying, they're worried about what other people are going to think or whatever. But then the other piece, I think they just see what, somebody else did and thinks that that's going to work for them. And then when it doesn't work, then it's like, let's just throw everything out and screw it and
Right.
never. So I think the other thing too is understanding that, like the way that you live, everything you're talking about, people might be listening and they're like, well, that's too much. Like, I don't want to go that far, but it
Right.
works for you and it feels good for you. And that's the thing. You have to figure out what works for you. And I had this conversation with a client not too long ago. She was dead set on eating a plant-based diet. And I'm like 85% plant-based. So I'm like, I can get on board with that. If that's the way you feel you want to eat, we can work with it, right? That's how you feel. But then realizing we're looking at, some of her functional labs and stuff and realizing there's some deficiencies and there's some things going on with her hormones. And so I'm just talking to her about like, what if we added, a little bit of fish to your diet? Or like, what do you feel comfortable? So we had this whole conversation where she was like, I wasn't really doing it for ethical reasons. I just thought it sounded like that's what I needed to do. And then she started adding a little bit of, animal protein to her diet. And all of a sudden, all these things are bouncing out. And I told her, I said, there's nothing wrong with eating a plant-based diet if it works for you. But we're seeing right now that it's not working for you. And there's things going on in your body that's telling you this isn't working. So it was such a good lesson to share with some other clients where it's like, for me, yes, I function great on eating predominantly plant-based. That works for me. But I'm not going to push that on everybody else because it doesn't work for everybody. So I think that's the lesson too. And what you're saying about all these things that you've learned for yourself, and you as a highly sensitive person, you also have like a different rule book that you have to follow to keep yourself in that like whole, aligned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I think it's people, and it all goes back to what you're saying, like tuning into that innate wisdom. I think just really when you're able to connect with yourself, you can understand what's right for you and what's not, and what feels good for your body and what doesn't.
Because your body will tell you.
Exactly.
You don't know, like you get to test it and be like, does this feel good?
Yeah, that's
And
it.
then
Trial and
it
error.
makes you right. And it makes you aware too of like, So after you eat the pizza, you're like, oh, every time I eat pizza, this happens, right? Or every time I
Mm-hmm.
eat ice cream, or every time, whatever
Mm-hmm.
that food may be, right?
Right.
Oh, I feel this. So practicing awareness, then it opens you up to, oh, maybe what I'm doing is actually not best for me. So even though I'm
Mm-hmm.
eating the plant-based diet, I still have all these other symptoms.
Exactly.
Or
Exactly.
even, even though I'm doing keto, I still have all these other symptoms.
Right.
So if you try something, whether that's a protocol for healing, a diet, whatever, and it doesn't work, doesn't mean there's nothing wrong with you,
Mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
that you're the one person that doesn't work for. It
Right.
just means that you have to try something different. And
Yep.
that's what's hard for people in our society because they want instant
Mm-hmm.
gratification. They want it now.
Exactly.
And healing doesn't work that way. Like
Mm-hmm.
it is
You got to
exactly.
play the long game. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is
Mm-hmm.
exact. It's a journey for a reason. It
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
not a sprint. It is a journey. It is a marathon.
Yep.
And for me, like just working with other clients, I have to stay extra resource. So I continue to do my own work, right? Like I
Right.
have my own mentor for somatic healing because if I'm not doing my own work, I'm a hypocrite if I'm trying to hold space for someone else, right? So it's this idea of like living in integrity for you.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Yep.
Right? So for
Yep.
me, it's practicing what I say.
Right.
It's living the way that I say that other people should live, right? It's connecting with Mother Earth. It's understanding and building resilience in my own body. It's working with my body rather than against it. And so again, like we said, it doesn't have to look the same for everybody. It
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't look the same for
Right.
everybody.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And there's
Exactly.
freedom there, right? There's so many choices, but we're only told about four, right? But
Mm-hmm.
there's like 4,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably more than that. But I'm just giving you an example of what it could be. And so it's having the freedom and courage to choose what's best for you
Yeah.
in
Yep.
small steps to
Yep.
not overwhelm the system, whether that's the mind or the body, right? The system
Mm-hmm.
as a whole. And so people always talk about the nervous system, but it actually affects all of the systems because they're
Mm-hmm.
all they're all related
They're
and
all
they all
connected.
interact with each other.
Yep.
And the body's always listening.
Yeah.
So if you're saying, I feel and it's something bad, the body is going to internalize that and it's going to feel
Mm-hmm.
more of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's also being aware of how we're speaking to ourselves. A lot of the times, like the way we speak to ourselves is not great. We fall into these unhealthy patterns and we don't give gratitude to all the things the body does. And the body gets that. And it's like, oh, okay, you're not happy? All right, well, here, I'm going to mess with this
Mm-hmm.
now, like,
Mm-hmm.
to get your
Mm-hmm.
attention. It's
Right.
not trying to punish you, it's just trying to get your attention so you'll pay attention. And
Right.
unfortunately, like you said, in our society, people don't pay attention to the body is screaming and shutting down until you have
Mm-hmm.
stage 4 cancer,
Right.
until you are bedridden and can't get out of bed, until you can't leave the bathroom, like whatever
Right.
name pick your poison, right?
Right.
Like, unfortunately, we get to that point. And so I do these interviews so that people understand, like, it doesn't have to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it got to that point for me, and I learned my lesson. It was a hard one, and it took a long time. But I'm now more aware of like when my body says this is not the day to do this. More often than not, I listen because when
Yeah.
I don't, I pay the price. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I should have listened to my intuition on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I let my
Mm-hmm.
mind override it, and look what happened.
For
Right.
sure.
So again, you learn as you go. It's
Mm-hmm.
part of the process.
It is. It is. And I want, as we're starting to wrap up here, I want if you have any, I always like to leave, like you haven't given lots of tangible things here, but if you have anything to kind of leave people with in terms of kind of maybe they're just starting out on this journey, maybe they're on the journey, but they've been discouraged because, it's not, quote, I'm using air quotes, are working or whatever, but things to leave people with to help them really connect with themselves, their intuition, that innate wisdom, Mother Earth, like things, your parting words or a few things for people to really hone in on,
Mhm.
to move more from an empowered place within themselves.
So I'm gonna go back to the idea of safety. So
Mm-hmm.
safety in the body, safety in the environment. So the reason I work mostly virtually is because it's safety for me, right? I'm in my own environment. I have my dog next to me. My things are around me, right? I can spray my bye-bye choo-choo spray. And then the other person is also in their own environment. There's a safety level established, right? You can reorient to your space. And so a trauma approach is all about safety. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can enact that in your own life, right? Like, when you don't feel safe because your hackles get up, maybe your shoulders, you start to hunch over. You might feel something in your gut. You might feel a sensation in your chest, right? Like all of these innate biological reactions that we've had as long as we've been in the human body are created there to let you know, like, something's not right here,
Right.
right? Like maybe
Right.
you get the chills or something, right? So being aware of one that comes up in the situation that you're in. How can I bring safety back to my body? How can I let my body know? Because the body doesn't understand real threat or perceived threat,
Mm-hmm.
right? Again, it just wants safety. It just wants
Yep.
survival. That's all that it wants. And so when we are in these situations, it thinks we're going to die, but maybe we're not going to die. We're just in a dynamic that's not really healthy. And so the body
Mm-hmm.
thinks it's not safe. So if we can introduce more safety into our lives, right? Creating these routines, these rituals that create safety. So for me, that's getting outside in Mother Earth. That's doing my breath practice. That's doing my energy medicine techniques. That's communing with the plants, right? Like these are all things that bring me safety. And then you can build the safety, you can build the resilience in that you can then put yourself back in those same situations where, a year, 5 years ago, you felt really unsafe. You might feel not as unsafe, right? Because you're doing the work of working with the body, you're allowing it to heal. And that's the beauty of breath. Like we don't go into it with an agenda. We just allow the body to do what it was designed to do, to bring the
Mm-hmm.
body back into balance, to allow it to clear whatever no longer is serving us, right? And there's no re-traumatization with the talking of it. Like we don't have to be like, oh, what happened at age 5, right? Again, so
Mm-hmm.
it's bringing the safety back into our lives because we live in a very what feels like unsafe world,
Mm-hmm.
and we're surrounded by that all the time. So how
Mm-hmm.
can you mindfully bring back in some more safety?
Yeah, I love that. I agree with that so much. And I love that. So as we're wrapping up here, I have one last question I want to ask you. But before we do that, can you let everybody know where they can find out more about you? I have the links to your guides that you were just talking about, where they can find out about you and all of the energetic work that you do.
Yeah, so those guides are a great place to connect with me. You can also connect with me at mindbodyspiritbreath.com.
Perfect. Perfect. Of course, the links to all that is in the show notes, so you can go download those and get started with everything that Amy is talking about. The question I want to finish with, one I like to ask everyone as we wrap up, what do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
Be authentic to yourself
Mm.
and your own needs, even if it feels crunchy. Even if it feels not great, honoring your own needs first.
I love that. That's perfect. Such good words to end on. Thank you so much, Amy. This was such a good conversation. And I thank you for what you're doing and bringing these conversations, because I think, like we said before, the only way things are going to change is bringing more conversations like this to the forefront. So thank you for sharing your wisdom, and, you lived, trial by fire, and you're here to share it. So thank you for sharing and just for bringing this to the world.
Thanks, Hope.
Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I'd love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I can know how to provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics you'd like to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's @TheHopePedraza, or you can visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.